This is a clip from the latest episode of the Game Football Podcast from The Times. To listen to the full show, go to wherever you get your podcasts. How are we, team?
Good, thank you, Tom.
Headaches from last night, trying to keep up with all of that. It was a bit mental at times, wasn't it? Particularly in those first halves. Greg, did you enjoy yourself?
Yeah, to be honest, I watched Celtic Villa game. I was trying to zone out from all that because it was too confusing.
Too confusing.
Yeah, too confusing because so many goals coming in and like one wild, wacky table that you couldn't really keep on track of.
So here's me going, UEFA have nailed it, and last week me, you and Johnny going, this is a brilliant new format.
I didn't say that, Tom.
Have to hand it to them.
No, I'm going to have to disagree, but I'm sure we'll come to that.
No, we can start with that. Why don't we start with that? That's all everyone's talking about. We can get into Manchester City in a second. So you're not won over by the format. All my mates going, this is brilliant. I was looking at all the live feeds, people piling in. You have to hand it to UEFA. I'm not sure you do, but anyway, you can still have a go at them.
It's confected jeopardy. What was the jeopardy? Seriously, what are they playing for? Playing 2 fewer games in their calendar? That's what everyone was playing for. 9 of the 12 teams eliminated were already eliminated. Like there's not real jeopardy here. There's more games, 144 games to get to a point that you could basically.
So you don't think it was exciting to have Manchester City going into this final game? Aston Villa at one point, they're not directly going through in the top 8. That is exciting, isn't it? That's much more exciting than the usual final round of games in the Champions League, where teams have qualified basically after 4 matches, loads of dead rubbers.
Yeah, but City would have been out. Really, if your points per game ratio was, they won 2 out of the previous 7 games, they'd probably be out. So I think it's fortunate that they had some. And come on, is it real jeopardy that they've got to beat Club Brugge to go through? Again, no, I don't think it's real jeopardy. And you look at the final table, the standings. Tony and I were talking about this before. Liverpool, Barca, Arsenal, Inter, Atletico. I don't think anyone would disagree that it's not a surprise that they're in. Then you've got Leverkusen, Lille, and Villa. Leverkusen won the German league last year, so you could say Bayern maybe should be in for them. Lille and Villa are the surprises based on seedings and probably the standard of the team. And so then, but there's so many teams in it now that there's always going to be this. And as I say, what are they playing for? Avoiding 2 more games. And also, you don't necessarily play 2 harder games. Like City, that's a juicy draw.
Yeah.
Like, obviously. But Liverpool could play PSG. So, like, it's not really necessarily you're like avoiding some like huge challenge. It's just 2 fewer games.
I really enjoy the phrase confected jeopardy as well. It feels like a kind of arty kind of album title for an indie band. No, well, it's interesting that you've got this view. As I say, I wrote this like happy intro. Everyone's on board. The format's great. All the fans are loving it. Tony, your view?
Well, I didn't like the old format of, like you talked about, Tom, where it was quite obvious the 2 top seeds nearly in every group would go through quite comfortably. Yeah. But we've still got, as Gregor was alluding to, that, if you looked at the teams that are already out now, that most of them are quite predictable. I think the jeopardy has come where not seeing Man City high up, Bayern Munich not making the top 8, PSG, you could maybe, would they be in the top 8? But they're a better PSG team than they've had in other years. And then you probably put AC Milan maybe, but Italian football's really struggling. So the jeopardy's really in the mid-table group, isn't it? The ones that have got the extra 2 games. Yeah. That's where the jeopardy is. And you are going to get teams first, second and third having big club clashes.
Yeah, which is, as you say, we touched on it. Real Madrid or Bayern Munich playing Celtic or Manchester City in those knockout games. Milan or PSV playing Feyenoord or Juventus, so you could have a big all-Italian clash there. I guess that's what you're right about it being confected, but it's still exciting, isn't it? Whether it's jeopardy or not, that's still excitement. No, it's a good thing to energise.
When you go to the knockout stage, it got exciting anyway.
Yeah,
it's always been the case that it got exciting in the knockout stages, so that's no different. We've just got an extra knockout stage involving some teams that are quite big and some that aren't.
Are you angry because it was hard to follow, or are you angry because
I just think
because you actually don't think it's that exciting?
The early rounds when we thought, what are people playing for? What is this? This is nothingness. Because like you say, it's a big clash early in the kind of group stage. You go, yeah, but so what? Well, you can both lose and no one cares.
Yeah, I just want to bring Hamza in because Hamza, I thought you were the voice of anger and frustration about this new Champions League format. There's a clip of you that did the rounds on social media from the earlier days of the podcast this season where, no, but you said exactly this, and I was planning this show and thinking, well, at least we've got Hamza on. He'll be still angry about the format. Turns out everyone's in unison with you. You've not changed your mind, or have?
No, I'm not really a fan of it for a couple of reasons. One, I felt that this particular day of having all the things on at the same time meant this was more of a television spectacle rather than a sporting spectacle. And this is just within that general trend of seeing sport as entertainment first and prioritising the international audience and making sure they can all see this action playing out on TV on like one of those goal shows, which is what I watched. And I found that difficult because I watched a lot of football yesterday, but I didn't actually understand any of the football. No, you understand what I mean, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes perfect sense.
Any of the matches, you just see the highlights. But so for me, at least, I've always seen highlights shows, and this is very different to people who are quite a bit older than me, as supplementary to the match. So when I watch Match of the Day, I watch it in addition to me watching the match, and I enjoy that as a little bit of analysis, a little bit of highlights, just enjoying the stuff. But this was... The 90 minutes that I watched was pure highlights, which means that, I didn't get a real sort of sense of anything going on. And what I found quite disappointing was, I spoke to someone from UEFA a while ago, and they mentioned, like, they asked me, what do you think of the group stage? And I said, I don't really like it. And they said, okay, but wait, the last day, that's going to be big, right? That's going to be our big thing. It should be really entertaining. You'll have loads of teams fighting for positions. And it's true, lots of teams were going for top 8, trying to get into that the second group. However, you also had some teams for whom it didn't count. Liverpool and Barcelona were sorted. And I think there comes a problem when you've got teams like that having clear dead rubbers. And there were, of course, some dead rubbers in the old format. But when you don't play a team twice, when you only play them once, and that team, let's say it's Liverpool, put out the team that they did, that's not fair to all the other teams in the competition, because they put out what is essentially a third string team. It's not the second team. It's actually a group of academy players and Andy Robertson. How is that fair to any other teams that played Liverpool before, right? Because they actually played the full-strength Liverpool team. PSV managed to play this team. And technically, if PSV didn't win, they probably still would have qualified anyway. But I don't think that's fair. And I think if this is meant to be the big finale, you can't really have the best team in the group stage putting out a team like that, because I don't think that really shows any sort of regard or respect for the competition because of the way it's been drawn up. So I found this I found it difficult.
Can I just jump on that idea, Hamza, because that's literally what happens in cup competitions anyway. In general, that teams will undermine the competition, and you'll get that in the League Cup, you'll get that in the FA Cup was littered with teams, big clubs who've just gone second string, and Championship teams.
That's
did
a
that
one-off
as well.
game, though.
Yeah,
just coming back, Hamza, and to Tony's point, is your point that because it's a bigger amount of teams rather than like a 4 teams where you've played each other twice and you kind of get to the end and maybe you make changes, that's fairer to you than Liverpool making all those changes that could affect far more teams, i.e., as many as like 15 teams conceivably.
And of course, they haven't had because it's only one match, you don't have the opportunity to play them. At least in a group stage, which is smaller, you get the opportunity to play twice. So one of those matches will definitely be competitive, right? Almost certainly, it'll be the best team out against the best team of the other team. But in this format, you can wait till the end, and if you're fortunate enough to get this team that have beaten everyone else, it's okay, like we're at home, and they've sent the kids out. Fantastic. It's a free run at it for us if you're PSV, and other teams further down in the table will be thinking, I wish we could have played Liverpool last. I mean, who did Liverpool play early in the tournament? Did they play? I'm trying to think, but Milan, for example, they played Milan in the first match.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if it was flipped round? Milan would have absolutely loved to be able to play this Liverpool team
with
maybe
Andy Robertson at centre back.
Exactly right.
I remember a championship final day. It was one of the favourite pieces I've ever written, because like the energy was flowing through me after watching a championship final day, because the jeopardy was extraordinary. People were playing to avoid relegation. They were playing to get into the playoffs. They were playing to get into the top 2 to be promoted to the Premier League. That's jeopardy. This is not jeopardy. 9 of the 12 teams were out, and they're not really a surprise. Maybe Leipzig just about. And then you're playing for 2 extra games. It's not jeopardy.
Well, hold it, but we can't look at jeopardy just being the final day. You know, this is obviously there's a huge amount of teams that get eliminated, but there's going to be jeopardy in a much higher level going as the competition goes forward. I think the next round will be a lot more jeopardy when you find out who's playing who. Yeah,
is that not a good thing that they've added that to Tony's point about that? Excitement. And I take Hamza's point that it's more than about television audiences, but we do have to be realistic that the amount of money in the game. Not that I'm saying I want that to be a priority, but we have to look at it and go, this has got to be exciting for people who are viewing and paying a lot of money.
Well, it's still
that's where the money
exciting before, though, right?
Yeah, but not. I would say
they're playing 144 games to get to the exciting bit. That's like so. I take totally the point that that's kind of what was the case before. The group stages were still a bit of a formality, generally speaking. But now it's a much bigger formality, and there's even less jeopardy for the bigger teams to go out. That's ultimately why this was created. More games between the biggest clubs that actually didn't really matter. More games, more money, and then you get to the bit that actually matters.
Can I just say, I watched Villa like Gregor, and it was an amazing game, and there was loads of jeopardy in that game, even though both have still got something to play for. Obviously, Villa have gone through.
Yeah.
And I watched Man City and Bruges, and there was a lot of jeopardy in that game as well. So it was there, and I get Hamza's point of for some teams like Liverpool going to Eindhoven, it meant very little to Liverpool because they could field a whole 11.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting that you're always going to get a couple of teams. Yeah. I think in any format, the way they structure it, that are going to end up in Liverpool and Barcelona's situation, aren't they? So let's come back and talk about some of the teams there, because Tony mentioned Manchester City. I was going to start with them and we started talking about the format, which is absolutely fine, but you kept me on my toes. I thought we'd all be on board. I thought everyone would be singing from the same hymn sheet. No, turns out Game Podcast always keeps you guessing. But let's talk about Manchester City through to that knockout playoff round. A big moment for Pep Guardiola this. I was speaking with James Gearbrandt, who went to the game, Paul Hurst. Because of what had happened previously, it became a huge game at home to Bruges, which previously it wouldn't have been for Manchester City. Tony, how important was it, not just in isolation for this competition for City to get through, but for the season as a whole? We've talked so much about the difficulties they've had. For this narrative around their season so far, the struggles that Pep Guardiola's had, for them to make it through, give themselves another chance to keep going in the Champions League rather than crashing out in the first round.
Well, because they did this numerous times, they kept flashing to Pep on the sideline, didn't they? So when they went 1-0 behind, he was literally in meltdown mode.
Yeah.
And you could feel that this season that has literally fallen apart for them, that could it go another step further and they don't make it? And, I mean, look, the way Pep's talking, the way he's acting is just really weird. It's just like you feel this guy's he's putting so much pressure on himself.
Weird because we've not seen it from him before, or weird you think it's genuinely something that suggests that all is not well still within him and with City, or is it just weird because you're just not used to it?
Well, I found it weird because I feel like he's just losing it in every moment, and I'm never quite sure what he's going to do or say next, which has been quite funny, without being horrible, because obviously he's under severe pressure, but he can't work out. You can see he can't work out what has gone so wrong with City. I'm watching the game and I'm thinking he's still using Núñez as a right back, as a wing back, and it's not working. But he's stubborn in a way, isn't he? The way he goes about things, Pep. He looked so relieved after the game, and rightly so. He's kissing everybody and hugging. He's literally. I
enjoyed the big thing about what did you say at halftime? I told them we were out. I'm like, yeah. well done, Pep. Yeah, we all worked that out. Everyone knew that. It was on the top of all the live files. You're out. Great. Any other advice? No, we're out. Okay. Maybe he needs to stop overcomplicating it and just tell them plain facts.
And obvious.
I like this Pep. I like this Pep more than I've liked Pep ever before, actually.
You're more human, is that why you like?
Yeah, he's like, what did he say? He said, in the second half we lifted our soul and our hearts were free. When's Pep ever said something like that before?
Sounds like, is that because that sounds like a line from Braveheart or something? Is that why you like it?
He rarely says anything interesting. He like barely conceals his contempt for the media. He's done that for how many years he's been here. Yeah. Apart from the odd occasion where he's tried to G up his team, but he's trying to G up his team every bloody week now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he's trying. I think he is trying to be honest and sort of semi-statesman. He realizes he has to do something different here. There's part of that, and then there's part of it. I think it's just his sort of inner sort of turmoil is pouring out to all of us. Even You referenced it in one of your pieces the other week. The interview you gave when he was talking about what modern football is now, and the teams, like he referenced Brighton and Bournemouth, and saying this is what modern football is. And he even said again last night, he said, we're an old team. We can't play transition football anymore. Like, that, again, that's very honest.
Yeah, I agree.
No, but I was interested in your points, not just to Gregor's point there about what Pep's saying about his team, but also you were nodding along to Tony's point about Núñez at right back and things. And what do you make of this? Because it's still not perfect, is it? Even though they've won, they've gone through, it's good. It's still not the Manchester City we know.
So when I was watching that goal show thing, right? So you know that there's something coming, and me and my friend are watching it. We're like, Núñez right back, he's about to get roasted, and he gets absolutely cooked. And then done, and you see, look at him, he's got done, and then he comes and scores. But it's entirely sort of obvious what was going to happen. But it's weird, right? Because he's in this tension where in the last game he played Núñez and Guardiola like high and wide, tried to get them to play as conventional fullbacks, tried to surprise Chelsea, did it against PSG. And the interesting thing in the PSG match was that they went direct, and it worked and it didn't. And I think this is where Guardiola finds himself in a really difficult position where he sees the good stuff. And he sees the stuff that they're doing also contributing to the bad stuff. And what I mean specifically is that when they went long against PSG, they were giving the ball up quite often, but they're trying to get Haaland one-on-one at the back. And by playing direct into him, going over the press, knocking the ball down, playing with a 4-4-2 and then breaking, they had opportunities that led to the first 2 goals. But they also invited a more transitional game to build on what Gregor just referenced there. And that led directly or indirectly to the next 2 goals they conceded, and I can't exactly remember the third goal, but it doesn't really matter too much, because you in that match you could see him trying to tweak things and going, this will work, and then seeing it work slightly and also resulting in them losing as well. And then you have the Chelsea match where he tried the same thing again and it worked, and you go, he's thinking about, should I make small tactical tweaks, should I leave it as it is, but never ever sort of move away from the philosophy. At the same time where he's referencing the sort of meta of football slightly changing and maybe needing stronger, quicker, more reactive, counter-pressing players and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's really fascinating to see this play out in his head and see how he tries to work it out. And him literally trial and error every week. And I don't think they're that good in this match. Of the bits that I watched, if someone watched the full 90 minutes, you objectively have a far more qualified opinion than I do. Right?
Don't ever say that on the podcast.
No, seriously. Right?
Hamza's too busy throwing his remote control at the TV going, I hate this format, for God's sake, let me just watch 190 minutes in entirety, for goodness sake.
The second half, I couldn't
You had the choice to.
Yeah. Seriously, we tried to get the stream up, but as in, you know what the streaming things are like nowadays. It's terrible. So like,
you also can't be admitting that on a podcast as well. We always pay for our footage of watching football on this podcast.
So we share our logins, me and my sisters, right? But as in, if we do, we can't all watch it and Dad, right?
We're all the whole Khalik Lunat family are going to be kicked off TNT and Sky Sports after this.
But isn't like you've got your subscription that you pay for, and then you're like, I want to watch all the matches, but your Arsenal family who lives with you, so you want to watch the Arsenal match. Yeah. Anyway, it was rubbish to follow.
Don't get him back on the format. Manchester City, you were talking about Manchester City and the way they play. I wanted to pick you up on the point about going direct. You talked about it in PSG game, as you said, going in Chelsea game. Because it's going direct, but it's also with the purpose of beating the press, right? That teams are putting on them. Could you see that being if not a solution to Pep's problems long term, something that he uses for the next coming weeks? He's got some big games coming up, Arsenal at the weekend. Could you see it be something that he reverts to, going long to Haaland with those long passes, as Louis van Gaal always used to call them, not long balls, long passes?
Yes, because it's actually something that they do on occasion. If you remember when Arsenal lost to Manchester City at the Etihad 2 seasons ago, it was a famous-ish game. I think it was in February, but people may remember Erling Haaland scoring, taking his hairband off, all that sort of stuff. In that match, City played with a 4-4-2 and they went very direct into Haaland and used his running power alongside De Bruyne to play on the break. So, but they largely still sort of stuck to their principles of play. And for that reason, I think they will still use it where possible. And Pep explained as well that if you were going to leave Haaland one-on-one at the back, we now have a one-on-one opportunity with the strongest, fastest guy on the pitch against your centre-back. And unless you also have a guy of similar physical standing, you're going to struggle in that situation. You're always going to just play it in behind. So I think in that sense, yeah. In terms of actually changing his philosophy, I don't think so. I think he will try and stick with what he knows, just from the sense of... He spoke before after the Leicester match, and he said, in this period, have I sort of learned anything? And he said, yeah, to stick with what you know. I changed it against Everton, and to be honest, we're actually better against Everton than we were against Leicester. But he said, no, we have to stick with what we know. So I think you will see this this tactical change, but that won't necessarily signal a move away from the principles of controlling play with positions, possession, and trying to generally compress the opponent into their penalty area, so they're as far away from your goal as possible, and then trying to break them down where possible. But if they're going to press all the way man-to-man and leave Haaland at the back without a spare man, then they'll hit it. That just makes sense, I think.
Yeah. Gregor, you're talking about liking this new version of Pep, or the more real Pep, if you like. They've got a huge run of games coming up. They've got Arsenal at the weekend, Leyton Orient in the FA Cup, but then they've got Newcastle, Liverpool, Tottenham and Nottingham Forest. Are you still seeing what you said a few weeks ago, that this is going to be a difficult season? They've had some good results of late, important to come through this game. Does this start to suggest that perhaps psychologically, which is something that you've talked about on this show, that they look a little bit back to being at least confident in their own abilities again? And as to Hamza's point about some of the tactics, they might have thought about, we can get back to doing what we do best, which is winning matches.
No.
Don't think they're back yet.
No, I mean, look, clearly they've come through games that they might not have as well, for being brutally honest, and got wins from. So, and Pep admitted as much again last night. He was honest. He said we've won games that we maybe couldn't, we maybe might not have. Hamza's right. They're trying to find different ways to play. I still think there's a fragility there. We saw that against PSG. We saw it at the start, although it was kind of concentrated, isolated around Kusanov. We saw that at the start of the Chelsea game. No, I don't think they're back. I don't think. Yeah, it's big for them to get these victories.
No, I'm only interested. You've spent the last couple of seasons on this podcast going, Manchester City will come. They'll come.
I heard
at some
someone
point.
say last night that it would almost have been better for City to go out. And I thought it was actually quite persuasive. It's like they could do with playing fewer games and having like a bit of time and stuff. And clearly, it would have been a massive deal for them to go out, but it's 2 more games. Yeah. It's a team that already look like their legs are going. I'm needing to exert more energy in proper high stakes, like elite level games.
Tony, final word from you on City. Similar question to Gregor.
Well, but look, they can't control games like they used to. You know, you mentioned there the Chelsea game. Chelsea could have easily gone 2-0 up at the Etihad. They struggled against PSG. They got a 2-0 lead, and then there was pegged back. And once they were pegged back, it was inevitable they were going to lose the game. And I would say that last night was pretty similar. He took Gundogan off after 45 minutes yesterday. Don't know if that was just tactical or injury. But he's having to spin plates with his team. Pep's never done that with his City side. He's never done it with a Bayern Munich team. I think when they lost once 4-0, was it Real Madrid when they lost 4-0? Many moons ago when
Bayern
Pep
Munich,
when he was Bayern Munich manager. And it was the first time I'd ever seen Pep completely lost. He went with a tactic that completely backfired, and I think he's at that stage now where he's not convinced by what he's got. I think there's certain players that just can't do what they once did. Players have had to move on, like Cole Walker and others, and I don't see this. I think this season's going to be a problem right to the very end for them now, and I would, like everybody else really, no one could have imagined City would be like this, and I think Pep's got caught up in it and he's lost.
Yeah.
And I, he will be given the chance. Many managers aren't, but he will be given the chance to rectify all the problems they've faced. And he'll have Rodri back next year, which will make a big difference. But no, it's confused football. It's losing the ball. When did City ever lose the ball? They controlled every game that they play in. Even games they lost, they could take control of the ball.
Yeah.
Can't do that now.
Honestly, I didn't see this coming, guys. I thought we'd all be all for the format. I thought we'd have good news for Manchester City fans, but no, the format's crap and City are still useless as well. One team and one player in particular that definitely aren't crap, and certainly not in this competition anyway. Arsenal progressing through to the next round very comfortably, and another brilliant performance from Ethan Nwaneri with the winning goal in their 2-1 win against Girona. Hamza, I wanted to ask you about this player. Still very young, still very raw, but showing huge amounts of ability and stepping into the role that Bukayo Saka has left with his injury. He's a player that you saw, am I right, in the Youth Cup phase of his career?
Yeah, I watched him in the semi-final of the FA Youth Cup and then the final. The semi-final they beat City, Arsenal beat City 2-1 and they scored in the 90, actually no, it's like the 121st minute. So they went to added time. It was right at the end, and I think it was actually Lewis Skelly that scored. But in that match, Nwaneri played as the number 9. He was really cool, and it's interesting because a month ago, Arteta was speaking at a press conference, and he sort of cryptically said, "There's another position I think Ethan can play," and he just left it like that. And obviously, they like, "What position? What position?" And he went 9. So he'd clearly sort of like, I want you to ask because this is a cool sort of message to send. And then I checked. I was like, I did watch him as a number 9. He was fantastic. He would drop in. He linked up play really well. You could see then that he was a really skillful dribbler. And just going through a match report, there's a moment actually where he sort of dropped in between the centre backs and was trying to conduct play from there. So he benefits from, at that time, Jack Wilshere was his manager. So the team as a whole and he has benefited from a coherent style of play from the top level all the way down through the academy, which makes moving into the first team a bit easier. I'm still not sure what position he will end up in because, like I said, he played 9 here. Arteta believes that he can be a potential 9. In the match yesterday, he was cutting it off the right. Some guys at Arsenal reckon that he's best as a number 10. He's clearly got dribbling skills and creativity aplenty. So there's a lot of potential here. But often when you see players with potential, you think about what are they going to be rather than what are they now. And usually what they are now is just okay. But you see the potential of what they could be. This guy's not okay at 17.
No,
he's very good at 17. That's quite rare. So you're thinking about his potential and going, this guy could be really good. And you're looking at him right now, you go, this guy's also like, he's very good. He's up the level already. He's fantastic. His goal was great. Again, they didn't show the second half at all. It was all the other matches. Lille final, wow, great, amazing. But loads of goals there.
Come on, back to Ethan Nwaneri.
But they just didn't show them on TV. She'd have to switch over and but no, he was fantastic. I'm really excited to see what he can do. I wonder if he'll become a rotation option for Saka or whether he will have a midfield position outright. That is all fascinating and
he's doing all he can because every time he's given a chance, he's making an impact. He did it in the cup against Bolton, I think, early in the season. I was at the Leicester game earlier in the season where he played came on the 80.
Is that the 2-2 and then they won
He
it?
scored right at the end, the 99th minute or something stupid as they are nowadays. He came on in the 81st or something. He came on
We're very angry today, aren't we?
He had the cup as against Crystal Palace as well. He came on, didn't he get a great goal against Palace?
Yeah, he might have done as well. Yeah,
he did. Yeah.
But I just remember that game specifically because I had to write the Monday piece, and he'd only played 13 minutes or something, and I wrote about him. So that says everything. His impact was he was probably the man of the match from a 13-minute cameo. So.
He's eye-catching. When you watch him, you can. I quite watch him. Yeah, and when you see something, you think, wow, that's pretty spectacular. Very quickly to identify that when someone's eye-catching, as Asma's alluded to with the cup game and Gregor, I would say the same thing because I'm sure he came on against Palace and he immediately had an impact.
Yeah. We can tell he's a good player because Hamza described him as really cool, which is always a good sign on this podcast when Hamza picks up on a player as being really cool. Now, I know what you're thinking, Arsenal fans. We've bid for Ollie Watkins and you've not even mentioned it. All in good time. I promise we'll be talking about Watkins, John Duran and Aston Villa and some of the weekend matches too up next.